Okay, hi everyone. This is the R Malam. I just want to take some time to run through two very important functions, data manipulative functions that we use in R. And these are the select function and the filter function. Again, the select function and the filter function. So in the next couple of minutes, I will quickly just describe what this function does and how we use them in R. Okay, so these two functions, the select function and the filter functions, are components of the dplyr package in R. And the dplyr package is a package that is used basically for data manipulation and data management. Okay, so the select function has four distinct roles. Number one, as you can see on line 6, is that it's used to select desired variables, the variables you want to work with. So there are instances where maybe your data set has many variables. Probably you're working with a data set that has close to 50 or 100 variables. And at a particular point in time, you are interested in working only on a few. I'll give you an instance. Maybe you're interested in working only on the social demographic variables within that data set. And you don't want to use everything because that might slow down your work. So you can select the variables that you want or the variables you desire. In this case, those social demographic variables with your select function. The second thing that select does is that it deselects unwanted variables. That means it removes the variables you don't want. So you can deselect unwanted variables. Okay. The third thing that select does is that it reorders variables. It reorders variables. So you can put variables in an order in which you want them to appear in your data set or in your table. The fourth thing that select does is that it conditionally selects variables. That means you can select your variables based on a given condition that you apply to that code. So these are the four ways that select works. So we'll just look at each of these distinct roles individually. So number one, we said select is used to select desired or wanted variables. And the template is your data set, and then you pipe it into the select function. And then within the brackets of the select function, you put in the variables that you want to select, separating each one with a comma. So in this case, data set, pipe it into select, and then in brackets, variable 1, variable 3, variable 4, for example. So we will use our SUMAS data set to depict this example. So I'm just going to click on the SUMAS data set so you can view it. So this is a SUMAS data set, and we can see the variables that it has. So it has case ID, state, LGA, age, sex, health facility, date, onset, outcome, fever, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, date, discharge, date, death. So these are the variables that we have in the SUMAS dataset. So going back to our script, now we want to select the age, sex, and outcome variables. Age, sex, and outcome variables. So the code, just following this template that is on line 15, we say SUMAS, which is our data set. We pipe it into select, and then we select the age variable, the sex variable, and the outcome variable. And if I run this, so I run it, if you look at the console, it has selected just those three variables. You can see it has selected the age, it has selected the sex, and it has selected the outcome variable out of all the variables that we have in our SUMAS data set. Okay, so that's how select can select your desired variables. So let's move on. The second is that select can deselect unwanted variables, which means remove the variables you don't want. And the way it does that is that the template you can see on line 23, your data set, and then type it into select, and then you put a minus sign in front of the variables you don't want to be selected. So in this case, we're deselecting variable 1, deselecting variable 3, deselecting variable 4. So using our SUMAS data set to do that, we put in our data set, which is SUMAS, and then we'll pipe that into select. In this case, we're removing case ID, fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. If we look again at our data set, the first variable is case ID, and then over here we have fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. So we want to eliminate or remove these variables from our data set so that we can work with the rest. Okay, so going back to our script, if we run this code, this particular one, we run it. Now, if you look at your console, now you can see initially the first variable is supposed to be case ID, but case ID has been eliminated. So the first variable now is state, and then LGA, age, and then after health facility was supposed to be fever, vomiting, diarrhea. Sorry, this are still here. Why? Outcome fever. Sorry, there should be a problem. Oh, okay. We said you put a minus sign in front of each of them. We didn't include the minus sign. So I put a minus sign in front of fever, in front of vomiting, in front of diarrhea, and in front of abdominal pain. So I run this code again so that this time around, it has removed all of those. So it has removed case ID, and you can see there's no longer fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain in our data set. So that's how you remove unwanted variables. The third way select works, as you can see on line 29, is that you can reorder variables. So you can put variables in the particular order you want them to be seen, either in your data set or in your tables or something like that. So in this case, the way to do that is just to put in your data set and pipe that into select, and then put the variables in the way you want them to appear. So in this case, I want to first see fever, and then vomiting, and then diarrhea, and then every other thing can follow in the way they are in the data set. So when I run this code, you see that fever will appear first, then vomiting, then diarrhea, and then every other variable. So I'll just run this. So if we look at the data set in the console, you can see now it starts with fever, and then vomiting, and then diarrhea, before all the other variables that were there are now fit in, which is why we put in this everything here. Okay, so that's the third way select works. The fourth way select works is that it conditionally selects variables. And that means selecting variables based on a condition, a predetermined condition that you give to the select. And there are certain assistant functions that help select do this. And this include things like contains, like we have here, and then starts with, and ends with. So let's look at an example here. So for starts with, you say your data set, pipe that into select, and within the select bracket, you introduce this second function to say starts with a particular character or something like that, or a particular string. So we're asking select to select any variable that starts with date. Remember, it has to be in quotation marks. So any variable that starts with date. So if I replace that data set and put my summers there. So I just copy this and paste it on the next line. And I remove data set and I put summer, oh, sorry. And I put summers here, okay? And I run this. It will select only variables that start with date. So if you look at the console, okay? So you can see the first variable here is date onset, it starts with date. The second variable here is date discharge, it starts with date. And the third variable here is date death, it starts with date. So it's selected variables that start with date, okay? Then the next is, okay, let's try starts with again. This time around, we want to say starts with D. So any variable that starts with D, it will select. So let's run this. And let's look at it in the console. So you can see it has selected 4 variables because there are 4. There's an additional one that starts with D, which is diarrhea. You can see that. Every other variable here starts with D. Okay, so that's what it's done. Then let's look at the next one. Select variables that end with. So we can use ends with. So summers, we pipe that into select, and within the select, we put in ends with, and in brackets, E. So this will select any variable in our data set that ends with E. So if we run this, and then we look at the console, so you can see state ends with E, age ends with E, outcome ends with E, and date discharge ends with E. So it has selected variables that end with E, right? And then the last is contains. So you can tell select to select variables that contain a particular string. So in this case, we want it to select variables within our summers data set that contain the string R, right? So if I run this and we go to our console, so it has selected 3 variables, each contains R. So fever contains R, diarrhea contains R, and date discharge contains R. So that's how it selects. So you might be wondering what's the significance of this. So when you're working, for example, you're working in a data set and you only want to see probably you just want to work with the dates in that data set. That's a very good application of this. You can just say you want to select variables that start with date, and it will select only the variables that start with date or that contains date in your data set. And it will select only variables that contains date in your data set, and you can work with that. Okay. So again, just to recap on what select does, it selects wanted or desired variables. It deselects unwanted variables or removes unwanted variables. It reorders or rearranges your variables. And then finally, it conditionally selects variables based on a predetermined condition. Okay, let's look at the second function, which is filter. Now, if you notice, select works on columns, right? It works on columns. So if you're selecting columns, okay? Now, filter, on the other hand, works with rows. So when you're filtering each individual row. It means horizontally like this, okay? So that's one significant difference between select and filter. Select selects columns vertically. Filter filters rows horizontally, okay? So have that at the back of your mind. Now, filter selects rows based on given conditions, right? And then the template for using filter is your data set, like we see on line 56, your data set, you pipe that into filter, and then you give a condition based on the variable. Okay, so let's look at a few examples. Now, we want to filter rows in which sex is female. Remember, we have our Summers data set, we have age as a variable where we have male and female. So we want to filter only rows in which the sex is female. And so if we go here to write that is your Summers, you pipe it into filter, and then you say sex is equals to female. Now notice that we're using double equal sign here. And when you use a double equal sign, it's like you're asking if sex is equal to female, filter that row. So this is different from using one equal sign, which is equivalent to the assignment operator, which is used to assign things to an object name. So using two equal signs differentiates that from the assignment operator function. Okay, so here we're saying if sex is equal to female, filter it, right? So if we run this code, if we go back to the console, under the sex variable, you can see the sex column. Right now, we have only females on it because we have asked filter to only filter rows where the sex is female. You can see we have only females under the sex, but in the parent data set, we have both males and females, okay? So that's how filter works. A second example is to say we want to filter rows. Filter is supposed to be rows here. Filter rows for which the age is greater than 60. Now, if you look at the data set, we have age from between 1 and 18. So what we're asking filter to do is to just choose only rows for which the age is greater than 60. Okay? So when we go here and run the code, so it's Summers, type it into filter, and we say age is greater than 60. Okay? If we run that and we go to our console, you can see the age variable, and you can see all the age within it are now greater than 60. You can see they are all greater than 60. So that's what filter has done in that case. Now you can, if you notice in the first two examples, we've only asked filter to select based on one condition, but you can also use multiple conditions to work with filter. So the third example here shows us where we want to select or filter rows where sex is male and age is less than 15. So if you look, I have put a quotation mark on this "and" just to stress that we're saying we want both conditions to be satisfied. So its sex is male and age is less than 15. So any row that it's filtered will have to satisfy both conditions. So the code is your data set, which is Summers. You pipe that into filter, and then you put in the first condition, sex is equal to male, and remember our operators, and age is less than 15. So if we run this and we look at our console, you can see, first of all, sex. Now, all sex is male. You can see that everything is male under sex. And then age, everything under age is also less than 15. You can see 9, 3, 10, 4, everything here is less than 15. So any row that has been filtered here satisfies both conditions where sex is male and age is less than 15. So let's look at the next example, in which case it's the same code. The only difference is that we're saying either sex is male or age is less than 15. In the initial example, it was and, which means the row has to satisfy both conditions. But in this case, we're using or, which means the row can satisfy either of the conditions, either sex, male, or age less than 15, which means you can be male and have your age greater than 15 and still be selected, or you can have your age less than 15 and not be male and still be selected. So this is an or conditionality. So if we run this, if you go to the console, now you can see under sex, we have both male and female. But any place where there is female, it automatically means it has to satisfy age less than 15, right? And anywhere the age is greater than 15, it automatically means the sex has to be male so that it can satisfy one of each of these conditions, okay? So that's how to use your filter. So these are two very, very important functions, the select function and the filter function that are used in data manipulation, okay? Thank you very much for listening.